All right, so you want to like really get into the numbers behind the 2024 election.
We're talking like a deep dive into the actual polls, right?
You got it. And get this, our main source, it's a Wikipedia page.
Interesting. So it's like we're using a constantly updating source for this deep dive. I like it.
Exactly. Think of us as like, I don't know, explorers charting a course through all these polls. And our map is Wikipedia.
Okay, I'm with you. So who are the main players on this map, according to Wikipedia?
Well, on the Democratic side, we've got Kamala Harris taking over after Biden dropped out, which is a whole other story.
Right. And facing off against her, we've got, you know who, Donald Trump back for round two.
But here's where it gets interesting. Our trusty Wikipedia source, it also includes data on other candidates, not just Harris and Trump.
Third-party candidates that also ran. Why are we looking at them?
Well, it's like, I'm trying to think of a good analogy. It's like finding those bonus features on a DVD,
Yeah.
the deleted scenes, the alternate endings.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. They might not be the main feature, but they give us context, show us what might have been.
Exactly. For
Okay.
example, did you realize Robert F. Kennedy Jr. ran as an independent? He even endorsed Trump after he suspended his own campaign.
Wow, there's always something new to uncover with these elections. But okay, let's get to the main event. What do the polls say about Harris versus Trump, head to head?
Well, get ready for a nail-biter. We're talking really close here. Early October polls from Decision Desk HQ, 538, they've got Harris ahead, but by a tiny margin, like 2.4 to 2.9 percentage points,
So basically a statistical dead heat.
pretty much.
And this is where those deleted scenes, those polls with the other candidates get really interesting. Remember Kennedy, the one who endorsed Trump? Well, he was actually polling in the double digits at one point, even hit 15% in some three-way polls.
So he was pulling a decent amount of support away from both Biden and Trump.
Absolutely. And if we really dig into the numbers, we can see that Kennedy's support, it wasn't just coming from one party or the other. He was drawing from Democrats and Republicans alike.
Wow, so it wasn't just a case of him stealing votes from within one party. He was shaking things up for everyone. Makes you wonder if that played a role in Biden's decision to withdraw.
Yeah, it's definitely food for thought. Unfortunately, this Wikipedia page doesn't give us any juicy behind-the-scenes gossip on that. But it does show us how a third-party candidate, even one who drops out, can have a real impact on the race,
Like a ripple effect. Toss a pebble in a pond, and those ripples, they keep going even after the pebbles sunk to the bottom.
Exactly. And it reminds us that polls are just a snapshot, right? They capture a moment in time, but they can't always predict those bigger waves that might be forming beneath the surface.
Yeah, exactly. We don't want to get into opinions or anything like that. Right, like we said, just digging into the info. Okay, so this Wikipedia page, it mentions Republican Party efforts to disrupt the election, and even links to something called election denial. What is that?
So basically, it's like efforts to mess with people's trust in how elections work, often by saying there's tons of voter fraud, even if there's no proof.
And our source is specifically saying the Republican Party is behind this.
It does say that, but we have to remember this is just one source, one perspective, right? To really get the full picture, we'd want to look at a bunch of different sources, see all sides.
Totally. We always say, don't just take our word for it, go explore. But it's still important info, right? Adds a whole other layer to our deep dive here.
No doubt. We're looking at polls, trying to figure out what voters are thinking. But what if all those votes, what if they don't even matter as much because people are messing with how they're counted?
Man, that's a scary thought. Okay, so imagine this. We're watching a horse race, right?
Yeah.
We think we know which horse is in the lead, but then, out of nowhere, bam! Someone throws a wrench into the gears, messes with the whole thing.
And that's where all those what-if polls we talked about, they get even more interesting. We talked about how Kennedy might have influenced Biden dropping out, but what if that was just the beginning?
Like, what if those polls showing Kennedy gaining support, what if that was just the tip of the iceberg?
Exactly. What if some people saw him as a way to stir things up even more, make the results super confusing, make it easier to say, see, we told you the election was rigged?
Whoa, that's like next level political strategy, playing 4D chess while everyone else is stuck on checkers.
Right. And it shows how important it is to look beyond the surface. Don't just accept things at face value. Think about why someone might be presenting information a certain way.
So, yeah, the polls are interesting and all, but we got to remember, the 2024 election, it's happening in this whole world of uncertainty, with people maybe trying to manipulate the system.
Exactly. And that's where we, as voters, we got to step up, right?
Okay, so what does that even mean? How do we step up in this kind of crazy political climate?
Well, for starters, don't just get your information from one place. Look at lots of different sources, see who's saying what, and then
Yeah.
don't just believe everything you read.
Be skeptical. Question everything.
Exactly. Do your research, look for different points of view. Don't be afraid to be like, hold on, I'm not so sure about that, even if it's someone you usually agree with.
And maybe most important of all, just take a breath.
Yeah.
Right? Remember, at the end of the day, democracy, it needs everyone to be on board, to trust the process, even if their side doesn't win.
Yeah, for sure. It's easy to get caught up in all the strategy and the polls, but at the end of the day, yeah, it's about making sure the whole system works.
And that's something we definitely can't just assume will happen, right?
Yeah.
This whole Wikipedia deep dive, it really shows how important this 2024 election is. We've got Harris and Trump neck and neck according to the polls. And then there are all those what-if scenarios, right? Like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., even though he's out of the race, he still could have changed things. It's like those movies with the surprise twist endings. You never know what's going to happen.
Totally. And then on top of all that, we've got this whole other thing about people maybe trying to mess with the election, make people doubt the results.
It's a lot, right? So, okay, let's bring it back to our listeners. You tuned in because you want to understand this election. What are the big takeaways, the things to keep in mind as we go forward?
Well, I think the first thing is don't expect any easy answers. The polls, they basically say it's anyone's game at this point. Harris might be a little bit ahead, but it's so close it practically doesn't even matter.
So what you're saying is, buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride.
You got it. And here's the thing about those polls. They're useful, but they don't tell the whole story. There's so much more going on, stuff they can't predict, like what if someone tries to interfere with the actual voting? Or what if, like you said, some crazy unexpected event throws the whole race for a loop?
Like trying to predict the weather, right? You can check the forecast, but sometimes Mother Nature just does her own thing.
Exactly. So basically, stay curious, stay informed, but most importantly, stay engaged. Don't just be a spectator in this whole thing.
Right. Get in there.
Exactly. Do your research, listen to different opinions, and don't be afraid to ask questions because a strong democracy needs everyone to be involved.
Couldn't said it better myself. And on that note, we'll leave you with this. This whole deep dive into Wikipedia, it showed us just how complicated this election is, but it also reminded us that being informed, being aware, that's powerful.
Yeah.
The more we understand what's going on, the better choices we can make as voters.
And the better we can protect the whole idea of democracy, right?
Exactly. So to all our listeners out there, stay curious, stay engaged, keep asking questions. Because, the future kind of depends on it.
Couldn't agree more.